Just last week, Prime Minister Najib Razak called again on corporate Malaysia to mirror the diversity of the country in the workplace. A most recent survey by TalentCorp and PwC showed that many public listed companies continue to lack gender, ethnic, and age diversity. For more, we're joined by Joanne Mahmood Merican, CEO of TalentCorp. Now, this has been a hallmark of what we've been attempting to do in bringing back talent, saying diversity is a way to improve the bottom line for a company and to enhance business performance. But it doesn't seem like we're gaining enough traction in that direction.
No, you're right, Sophie. I think what the Prime Minister said, now diversity is not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. And many research has shown that companies globally do a lot better when they have greater diversity. Now, there's also a glass half full side to it. I mean, there have been some progress. So even on gender diversity, we want at least 30% of women in decision making. We see that now, at least in top management, there are at least 22% of women in top management amongst listed companies, and some sectors like finance and consumer goods, it's reached 30%. But the concern is where we're seeing that up to 30% of top listed companies don't have any women on board. About 19%, that's 1 in 5 companies, don't have any women in top management.
What has been identified as hurdles towards even getting 1%, 2% on board?
Now, I think that one of the issues that we are seeing is that again, globally, flexible work arrangements is probably one of the well-recognized areas to better attract and retain talent, including women. But we are also seeing through our survey that the take-up or practice of flexible work arrangements in Malaysia is relatively low. I mean, something as simple as staggered hours, having a different start time. Only about 28% of our listed companies have them. And when surveyed, only about 10% say they're planning to implement or enhance their work-life practices within a year.
Now, when identifying policies that corporates should be putting into place, are there other types of incentives saying if you put in this much diversity at a senior management level, you will then see improvements of bottom line at this much? How much of a hard, pragmatic approach should be taken to spur companies in that direction?
So I think the government has taken the position that we want to have an aspirational target to improve diversity. I think there's no intention of putting it as a quota, but I think this is where we need to raise awareness, and I think that's part of the reason of having the survey. I mean, even highlighting, for example, on the ethnicity front, up to 24% of our companies don't have any ethnic diversity in top management. And that's just like 1 in 4 of our leading companies. And you'd think, the spirit of one Malaysia, you'd really expect, and also if you're going to be successful in business, you'd expect that you'd have top management and board reflecting your consumers. And naturally, you then would expect some consumers, and if you want to be more innovation-driven or creativity-led, you would want to see that diversity.
Now, Johan, to be realistic, in order to get the kind of quotas that we're aspiring to here, you have to start afresh in some way to say, okay, this next generation of workforce is going to be key towards achieving those goals, but down the track, because it would seem that we don't have the right mix as it currently stands.
But we are seeing some progress. We're seeing some companies, even on the board front. I think with the awareness that the Securities Commission Bursa have been placing, you're now seeing some companies paying more attention to it. We now have 19 companies out of the top 100 which have more than 25% of women on board, and this includes, whether it's JLCs like TM or BIMB to even multinationals like DG or Nestle, and even some family-owned companies like Public Bank, Top Glove have more than 25% women on board. So I think some are getting it. Some, I think, recognize the business case for it, but clearly a lot more needs to get on the train.
Are there any penalties if these targets aren't met?
No, but perhaps we should have some form of social censure. Maybe the next time we should highlight those with no women on their board at all. I mean, there are still obviously quite a few, judging from our survey.
So a little bit of a carrot and a stick approach, perhaps.
That's something which they've done in UK. UK has something called a 30% club, and one of the consistent things they did in the campaign is that they took out these ads and put out, these are companies with no women on board. And after a while, that numbers started dwindling, I guess part of public pressure, part of stakeholder pressure. I think investors also have a role to play in terms of, letting the companies know this is what is expected of a modern-day company operating in a globalized environment.
Now, Johan, ultimately, the role of TalentCorp is to also entice more Malaysians back. Now, given what's been happening of late, and we've had recently some senior figures discuss that conditions here aren't as enticing as they once were for investors or perhaps talent to come home. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's always a risk, particularly in times of global uncertainty, that companies might then cut back, whether in terms of staffing numbers, they'll cut back in terms of rewards, they cut back in terms of training. I think these are obviously some concerns, and perhaps we look forward to Budget 2016 introducing some measures, or even a special economic committee, I think, introducing some measures. But at the end of the day, Asia is still the heart of growth for the world. We still have our Malaysian organizations still going regional, whether it's your Asia's, Axiata, Sime Darbis, of the top major exporters, they'll still need talent to grow. And I think there's still exciting opportunities. I think sometimes we need to be able to look beyond whatever immediate volatility. At least on Talent Corporation side, we're still very actively engaging with talent globally on some still very exciting opportunities right here in Malaysia.
And as you say, Johan, we look forward to Budget 2016 to see whether or not the people's economy is still maintained in that. Thank you so much for joining us on set today. That was Johan Mahmud Merican, CEO of TalentCorp.